Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. Before we do that, I'd like to say a big thank you to the folks at Pega for sponsoring my podcast for the coming month. You see, it's almost time for Pega World Inspire, the annual conference from Pegasystems. Join them online for free on June the 2nd from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time to learn how the world's most impactful companies are driving digital transformation, which is much, much more important than ever in this COVID-19 age. They'll have compelling keynotes, demos, and case studies in a highly interactive virtual format, and a few surprises as well. Go to pegaworld.com to find out more, to register for free, and to check out the full agenda. I've been lucky enough to have attended the last several Pega Worlds in person, and I can't recommend them highly enough, so go register today. That's pegaworld.com. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that for now. Let's get back into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Tom Libretto, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Pegasystems. Hi, Tom, and welcome, back, I should say, to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you. So, Tom, for the benefit of our listeners and readers and people that may not have been the long-time subscribers to the podcast and may not have encountered you before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also a bit about the work that you do?
Sure. So Tom Libretto, Chief Marketing Officer of Pegasystems. We are an enterprise software vendor that focuses on customer engagement and intelligent automation and customer service solutions for the world's largest brands. So as the CMO, I lead all marketing functions and drive our own version of customer engagement, or as we call it, client engagement, across the target audiences that we're trying to connect with on a day in and day out basis.
Perfect. Now, Tom, we have previously spoken face-to-face at the Pega World events, and some of those chats have been featured on the podcast before. And normally those events, like Pega World, is normally held in Las Vegas, like down at the MGM Grand. But this year things were going to switch up a little bit because you were set to change, and the event was set to move to Boston. And then the coronavirus arrived, and then everything changed. Now, Pega World is now going virtual, and it's going to be held on June the 2nd, online, kind of virtual extravaganza. So tell us, Tom, what can we expect to see this year or hear this year about at the event?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we were looking forward to hosting our flagship event this year in Boston, but that is no longer obviously an option. And like all companies on the planet, we've switched to the virtual format. We're excited. It gave us an opportunity to reimagine front to back what a virtual event experience should and would look like. So as we reprogrammed Pega World, we did a lot of due diligence across the marketplace, looked at what others were doing, sprinkled in our own innovative ideas, and we're confident we arrived at a program and a format that will be highly engaging. So as you mentioned, June 2nd, we will host a 2.5-hour live streamed event that will be chock full of customer stories, product demonstrations, innovation hubs, breakout sessions, and anchored by keynotes, as we typically do in our physical events. The themes are pretty poignant to the moment. We will have on full display a series of theses around the requirement and really poignant need for both pervasive digital transformation and in a way that can drive immediate impact.
Right.
So that the content programming across the 2.5 hour event leans into those topics, with pragmatic insights and examples of what some of the leading companies on the planet are doing in the moment, both to address the current acute requirements of today, but establish a foundation for pervasive transformation on the other side of the crisis here.
Perfect. And it's important to point out is that you've kind of made it open to pretty much everybody now, and it's also free to attend. So anybody can show up and kind of participate as well.
Absolutely. And we hope everyone does show up.
Fantastic. The whole world. Hopefully the platform is kind of like set up to deal with about 8 billion people. So, but the thing about it, now I know you work with lots of big enterprise brands. I mean, some really, really big ones. I mean, I saw some stats which said that you actually, in fact, work with 9 out of 10 of the top healthcare and insurance companies and 7 out of 10 of the top global banks and global communication service providers. So what's really interesting to me is that puts you in a really privileged position to see some of the big things that are going on. And also to kind of reflect on some of the big challenges that some of these enterprises have been facing, particularly in response to this coronavirus outbreak, and also how big enterprises have been responding. I mean, can you give us a summary of the sort of things you've been seeing and some of the big themes, like where have been people been sort of like putting their kind of like the shoulder to the wheel, as it were?
Yeah, undoubtedly, it's been a fascinating few months as we're deeply engaged with many of our clients across, as you mentioned, the financial services, insurance, healthcare, telco, and manufacturing, and even public sector industries. That there are some commonalities that we've found that are relatively or in the wheelhouse of the inundation of customer requests at significantly higher volume levels than these brands or companies have typically dealt with in a business as usual environment. So simply handling that volume, triaging that volume, and responding to their customers or constituents, as it were, in more of the public sector domains, has been an enormous challenge. Then industry by industry, the challenges break down from there and are less common. So in the financial services sector, the need to quickly adopt government mandated care programs or payment relief programs or small business and personal loan programs, the list goes on and on and on, has put a tremendous strain on their ability to immediately pivot and react to those top-down government regulations. In the public sector, we're finding a lot of our large government clients are also dealing with volumes of new intake requirements relative to unemployment claims and other that are again were unplanned and putting tremendous strains on their systems and their human capital to be able to respond.
Right.
So it's been dynamic across the board with some common and very nuanced specific issues we're finding industry by industry.
Perfect. Now, what's fascinating, because I've been talking to different people about this sort of stuff over the last kind of few weeks. And it was interesting. A friend of mine sent me an email the other day where he wrote, amazing to see how much punk CX is going on. So people bootstrapping their way through enormous changes in days rather than years. I mean, it's amazing what a crisis can precipitate. I mean, does this chime with what you're seeing? I mean, has this time accelerated that adoption of digital technology? And more importantly, how is it transforming the service and experience that these enterprises are delivering?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think in many ways, many digital transformation initiatives were long lead cycle, nice to have,
Right.
programs, that really never had an end date in mind. They were noble ambitions,
Right.
but there really were no burning platforms that made them must-haves, and that is completely flipped. So in a good way, put a very pragmatic lens on top of the digital transformation definition, because
Mm,
in this time, um, it's hypercritical that organizations are able to respond personally, able to respond quickly, able to deploy new programs, deploy new messages into the marketplace, and keep their customers, close to their brands.
mm.
So the fire has been set, and that is accelerating a lot of the initiatives that, as I mentioned, were previously, a bit longer in the tooth and more ambition versus immediate outcome oriented.
I mean, do you think because it feels to me that also that there's an opportunity to, people are talking about how customer habits or customer behaviors are changing, and actually some of those those behaviors may actually change into new habits, as it were. Do you think there's an opportunity that many of these enterprises will also kind of like develop new habits out of this crisis in terms of how they respond and how they tackle things, particularly, to use your word, how they triage kind of what they focus on and why, and how they better prioritize things in these kind of programs that they consider, and the choices that they make.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that every company on the planet has quickly realized that a digital business model, or a digital style of interaction, will forever now be the norm.
Right.
Almost, and supplemented by the more traditional, retail types of interactions. So in many ways, we're all being forced to develop new muscles,
Yeah.
and that requires, new ways of thinking, new technology platforms, that we describe as digital
Mm.
platforms, not only to respond to current increases in volumes, but to establish a more persistent digital formatted way of interacting with customers and markets in general.
Mm. And with a bit of with a bit of new muscle development comes a bit of pain as well. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
so, I mean, Tom, to bring this to life a little bit, I mean, can you give me a couple of examples of sort of clients of your clients and some of the challenges that they were facing and what they've done and the sort of results that you've been able to help them kind of generate? I mean, just to give us a sense of the scale of these kind of things, and what a sense of kind of like what some of these enterprises have chosen to focus on doing and why.
Yeah, sure. So pretty immediately post the arrival of COVID-19, we got together inside our organization and determined that our Pega technology, be it an industrial strength, intelligent automation platform
Mm-hmm.
technology, could be used to solve a variety of these very poignant here and now issues.
Right.
Stood up a portfolio of what we call COVID response applications, and the adoption has been pretty profound. A few examples are one of the 19 states within the German government, the state of Bavaria,
Uh-huh.
called us and said, "Look, we're in a situation where we need to turn around, in a matter of days, the small business loans that our government is requiring that we now make available to small and medium businesses across our jurisdiction." And we worked with them. 72 hours later, we were able to deploy a solution that lets small and medium businesses apply for and then fulfill and receive those loan payments.
Right.
So that's one example in the public sector. Another one is the state of Florida, who was in the news pretty pervasively around the unemployment claim debacle from a sheer volume point of view that they were unprepared for.
Sure.
They called us up, and again I think that one was 48 hours later. We had put in place a new application intake system that at least eased the burden for Florida residents to submit their applications to the state of Florida.
Yeah. And, kind of I find it remarkable because I heard stories of, and sometimes the variation in response across different enterprises has been massive. I remember reading a story about financial services here in the UK and the opportunity to take a mortgage payment holiday. And while some at one end of the spectrum had said, yeah, we're completely digitally enabled, kind of like do it online, that's fine. It's easy as pie. And then the other one, they were forcing kind of their customers to call them up and to wait for sometimes hours in a phone queue.
Yeah.
Which is completely anathema to kind of what you would like to think should happen, particularly when it's a time of huge anxiety. But the variety of response has been kind of marked. And I think what I'm seeing also is research is that customers are kind of watching about how many enterprises are responding, and that's having a real impact on what they think about them, and now and kind of going forward. So it's a really critical time, and how people respond there's huge pressure and scrutiny kind of on how these enterprises are responding right now.
Oh yeah, the stakes are extremely high, and it really is going to be a moment of either destroying brand loyalty and therefore retention levels, or being a leader in that regard, and coming out the other end of this stronger.
Absolutely. So, given that you're in the middle of the maelstrom, Tom, because you really are, let's face it, and because you were saying, but just before we kind of got started, you were like going, "Yeah, we're super busy right now."
Yeah.
And so for somebody listening to this or reading the highlights and also that realizes that we're in the middle of it, but we're also at the start of it. This is, if you like, the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end, as it were. I can't remember where that quote comes from, but there will be a number of waves of this. But given that people listen to this and I know read the highlights and they want to improve their service or experience that they deliver to their customers or clients, now and going forward, where should they be putting their focus? What would be your best advice to them?
Yeah, I think we've been consulting our clients to take a very and fundamental different approach to their transformation initiatives, where typically we find that organizations will either start in their channels and try to address, for example, in the current time period, address those volume inundations by embedding their business logic into their call center or into their mobile app or into their website, and that is destined for failure, because changing anything as new needs arise, new demands take hold, markets shift, the unpredictability of what's around the corner requires a tremendous refitting, retrofitting, recoding, etc. That's not only waste and throwaway work, but really constrains an organization's ability to turn around those things fast.
Right.
And likewise, long has been the other erroneous definition of digital transformation, which was all about rationalizing back-end data and systems. and thinking that if I just clean up my data environment, that's gonna, that's gonna make me more agile, faster to respond to customers. And that has proven for decades to be a failed effort. So what we're advising our clients do is really take a center out approach and start from the middle of their business by adopting a digital platform that can be the the steward for defining business logic and then driving it into all channels all the time, and integrating that platform with backend systems and data as needed. That helps organizations be tremendously fast.
Right.
And there's been no time that I can think of where speed, agility, and adaptability to change has ever been more profound. And a lot of the technology architectures, or what we like to classify as business architectures, simply don't support that that level of speed. So that's really what we've been speaking pretty pretty loudly about with our clients.
Awesome. So, I mean, that seems like an interesting kind of like, and a useful kind of jumping off point, because I wanted to kind of switch gears a little. Now, this might be a redundant question because we don't know what, I guess now more than ever, we might not necessarily know what the kind of the future holds for us, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. So what do you think the future of service and experience kind of like looks like? And what are some of the big challenges ahead that you think that companies need to get their heads around and start to tackle? I'm asking you to predict the future, and I know that's probably pretty much a fool's errand in these current kind of like times, but I'm going to ask you anyway, Tom.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think in many words, it remains a bit of buzzword bingo, but with now some pretty clear examples of what some of those things mean. So, for example, the concepts of seamless or frictionless customer experiences, omni-channel or channel-less, all in well-orchestrated digital formats, has long been on everyone's PowerPoint charts.
Yeah.
And the rogue initiatives have been stood up over and over and over again, with really no end destination in mind.
Mm-hmm.
What the current crisis has done is put a face to some of those concepts, where for example, in the telco space, the volume levels into inbound call centers, specifically to request payment holidays, has been enormous.
Yes.
And that's immediately the light bulbs start going off around, well, boy, if I could self-service those requests through my digital channel, or augment the capacity of my human resource population in my call center with a unified messaging channel, so I can take I can 5x the number of concurrent calls that a CSR could handle, or even more so, capture those requests in the IVR and fulfill them without the call ever reaching my contact center. Boy, I'd be in a better spot.
Yes.
So those types of concepts have quickly pivoted into real pragmatic solutions. And I think on the other side of this, that will then be the new bar by which companies are addressing customer service experiences.
Mm-hmm. I think there's something I've been thinking about as well. It's a bit like, we all know, and we've known it for a while, and unfortunately it's not particularly sexy kind of work, but the best, the companies that we hold up as being the best are the ones that remain and sustain themselves, are generally kind of pretty brilliant at the basics, but understanding that the basics shift, and the basics are not necessarily what they think about, but it's also about the basics for what matters to the customers.
Right.
Because it requires kind of like, it's the delivery of confidence and certainty and all that. So avoidance of risk and failure and disappointment and things, and getting things done in a quick, easy and effective kind of manner. And I think that's something that I think that I've been using to describe that, is just going like, this is all about, I've been talking about it as like the crisis is if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, something I've been thinking about, it's almost like the top of the pyramid has just been swiped away. It's like, that's, the social and the love and the self-actualization is what we were kind of aspiring towards before, but now the crisis has locked the top off the pyramid, and now it's all about security and physiological needs, are really basic needs. And almost that's the lens from which we need to look at these things right now, and we're also seeing the huge importance of those things. But unfortunately, in the past, those have been almost like, it's like dirty work in many ways.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing that the dirty work, particularly as it's manifesting itself with the frontline workers and things that are keeping the wheels turning on our healthcare systems and economies, that's kind of the really important work as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think the triggered a thought. What, in terms of dirty work, there's probably no dirtier than dealing with email volumes.
Yeah.
And we had one of our large airline customers call us and say that they're sitting on 250,000 emails that are right now unresponded to.
Why?
And that had been a channel that had been sort of left to atrophy, because no one uses email anymore to deal with an organization from a customer service perspective. But all of a sudden, that creates tremendous pain and strain on an organization like that. But with pretty simple technologies like NLP, we have an email bot. Mm-hmm. They can triage all of those emails and automate responses, and be done with it.
Sure.
So there is a lot to, like you said, cleaning up the gaps that have been exposed by the current environment.
Perfect. So Tom, that's really, thank you for that. That's super interesting and really useful. I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we've missed out? Reflections on kind of this time, and and what we can potentially what we'll hear about at the PegaWorld Online.
Yeah, no, I would just restate that we're excited to tell our story at PegaWorld. We think we have a very unique and differentiated point of view, both having dealt with and dealing with the largest companies on the planet, who are going through, a wide berth of both challenges now, but quickly understanding that there's a brighter future that needs to be prepared for. So we're excited to host you and the rest of the 8 billion people on the planet, as we mentioned earlier, to sit in and hear that story, because it is a powerful.
Perfect, thank you. So a couple of final kind of fun questions that I always have been using to end these conversations on, and it's the two questions related to Punk CX that the book that I published last year, which I know you've got a copy of. And so the first question is a word association game. So if I was to say, what one or two words would you use to describe a bit more of a punk approach to, service and experience, what would you say?
The word number one would be grit, which is one of my favorite words anyway.
Not the stuff that you eat, the pebbles, I'm assuming.
Yeah. More in the resiliency realm. I think the now's the time to just get it done. Yeah. And having that fortitude, to power through, mm-hmm. Is what's gonna is gonna lead to those standout successes.
Awesome. And the second question is, what company or brand do you think epitomizes that sort of ethos?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we're finding great examples across the board. Probably no more profound than healthcare providers, that we're dealing with now on a hour by hour basis.
Mm-hmm.
And the can't mention their name, but the largest health provider network in the United States, we're actively working with to support their transparency and understanding of the health status of their own 250,000 member staff,
Right.
that is dealing with the frontline triage of of the wider population. And that to me is probably the epitome of grit by a mile.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you for that, Tom. Thank you also for kind of sharing your insight and your kind of experience of what you're seeing right now, because you are at the supporting some, as you say, some of these large kind of enterprise players and seeing what they're going through. But also kind of thank you, one, for inviting me to the event, but also kind of like just want to say thanks for sponsoring the podcast over the course of this month as we kind of like lead up to the event, because as I say, I'm a bit of a supporter of Pega. I've been around the events for a while. I love some of the stuff that you guys kind of do and the technology that you're developing and all the kind of the cool stuff it's kind of doing. So you're nice folks as well, which is even better. But just want to say, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing your time and your insight with us today. That's been awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thanks for the kind words, Adrian. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and your audience. So I look forward to the next time we're able to do that.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.